Hey everybody, I'm Amanda with DevExpress and welcome to our first webinar in our Take a Tour 12.1 series, Stunning, Right Platform, Right Design, Right Decision, presented by DevExpress Technical Evangelist Mehul Harry. In this webinar, Mehul will demonstrate several iPad applications in DXperience 12.1 released as part of our next generation of tools, DX2. Mehul will demo a financial planner web app that looks and operates like a native iOS solution, but relies on the ASP.NET skills that developers have today, and learn the new templates and wizards built into 12.1 that simplify creating this type of application. Mehul will take questions at the end of the session, but you can enter your questions at any time in the questions section of your control panel. And now I will hand things over to Mehul Harry.
Thank you very much, Amanda. So as Amanda mentioned, today we're going to take a look at the first in the series of Take a Tour 12.1, where we provide you the stunning right platform, which is the right decision and the right design for whichever platform. And today we're going to take a look at ASP.NET, specifically the mobile solutions that DevExpress offers in this latest release, 12.1. So we've heard from a lot of our customers, a lot of enterprises, that they want to have mobile solutions today. However, there's usually a question of, do you provide a native experience or do you provide a web experience? Well, native experiences are great, except they come with a cost, meaning that you have to invest in either new staff or new developers with specific skill sets, which may be hard to find or expensive. And then you're not leveraging your existing talent or your existing infrastructure in, let's say, .NET, as well as the hardware. And you may also have to retrain your existing staff. So what DevExpress wanted to do, at least in this latest release, was provide you a way to target today mobile platforms like the iOS tablets, and as well as we also support the Android tablets. So in the last major release of 2011, we supported touch for all iOS devices, as well as Android 3.0 and above devices. So in this release, we've got something really exciting. We allow you to create web applications on ASP.NET that mimic the iOS look and feel with a new custom theme, as well as the capability to deliver that immediately through these new project templates. So today I'm going to show you the ASP.NET web apps that we've created for the iOS platform, and we're going to take a look at a little bit of the DXperience version 12.1. And as Amanda will tell you, we're doing a lot of this all this week, and we're going to show you all the things that we built for this latest major release of 2012 and how easy it is to get started. So the very first thing is we've developed a website called Money Monkey. Now we're going to have a little fun with the name, so we called it Money Monkey, but the idea essentially is it's a financial planner application, meaning that if you've ever used Quicken or really Mint on the web, it gives you this great experience that has two different views. One of them supports the desktop web view, which means that any browser that you use on your laptop or a desktop, something like IE, Firefox, Chrome, Safari for the web, and Mint also supports a mobile experience, meaning that you can download an application, but it has a slightly different approach on it. So let's take a look at how this experience feels. Now, the best way to check out this application right now is we've put it on the web. Now, if you go to devexpress.com and you go to try and click on product demos, this will bring you to all the new demos that we have, and including some videos of how some of these things were built, as well as experiencing them online. So the first one, Money Monkey, can be experienced by clicking on this Run Web Demo and Run iPad Demo. Now I'm going to open these in separate tabs here. Let's just put these full screen. So the very first thing is, in this one, this is a desktop version that's using DevExpress controls, and we're using mostly our themes. And so what we wanted to show you was that you can create something like this today. Now, if you're an existing ASP.NET customer, you know that this is quite possible. So this is using our charts, our grid, our controls here, navigation. What's really great, though, is that this experience is very seamless. And out of the box, if you were to run this on an Android browser, or any Android tablet or iOS device, it will be supported with touch because we introduced touch support in the last major release of 2011. So out of the box, you can create this and get easily touch support. Now, let's take a look at the mobile experience. Now, this experience is similar to the desktop web experience, meaning that we also have charts up here. But as you'll notice, and let me scroll this down a little bit here, is that we've put a little emulator here. Now, if you actually run this demo, for example, if you actually go to this URL from your iPad device, this will be rendered as, and it'll feel more like a native experience. And that's because this allows you that capability to write in ASP.NET. So as I mentioned, in talking with enterprises, the key challenges were, how do you support a mobile experience like this? Well, you can either write native, which is great, you get a lot of rich experience, but the problem with native is that you have to find existing talented developers, or try to hire them, or really retrain all your staff, which really doesn't leverage your existing investments in .NET and the equipment and the people. And so the best solution would be to have the capability to leverage your existing investments. And that's what DevExpress allows you to do in this latest release. So you can essentially say, listen, I want to have the exact same data. It's because really it's about content, right? No matter what device you're getting at, it's the content that you're delivering to your customers in a nice, meaningful way, meaning that you want to still have a nice look to it. You want to make sure that the touch targets are big enough. And that's what we've done exactly for you, as I'll show you through the project in just a minute. So I highly recommend you take a look at these today by going to demos.devexpress.com and just click on Money Monkey. Now, we also introduced another application for iOS specifically. Now, the reason we targeted iOS specifically was that, as you saw from the poll, is that, or actually if you didn't, a large percent of the people on this webinar today answered iPad, for which the device they're planning to target. And the reason is it's because the phones are great and the mobile experience on the phone is very nice, but the real estate is much smaller. So your opportunity to really support a large amount of functionality is limited on a small real estate device. So the iPad actually kind of gives you that experience to do the best of both. And so Touchboard is also our application to show you how you can deliver a stunning visual application. So let's take a look at it. Now, if you also go to demos.devexpress.com, as I mentioned, you'll see Money Monkey, you'll see the webmail client that we released in 2011, but this Touchboard, let's run it in a separate tab as well. Touchboard essentially is best experienced on an iPad. So while I will show you this on a desktop, I highly recommend you do this through the web. Now, why don't I do this through an emulator? Unfortunately, there is no good emulator for Windows. What happens is iPad for Safari has certain ways that it renders items. In fact, when you run something on an iPad, even if it's a web-based app, it will tend to use some native, native technologies. So, for example, if you have in this version here, if this scroll bar would appear on the iPad, you'll see that you actually won't see a scroll bar. And that's because iPad does something or Safari for iOS does something specific where when it sees a scroll bar, it de-emphasizes it, meaning it hides it until you actually scroll down the page, and then it shows you a minimal scroll bar. And so what we've done is we've built in all these smarts to take advantage of that. And I'll explain that in just a second. So let's take a look here. So in this application, the Touchboard application, it mimics the Flipboard application. Now, if you ever use Flipboard for iOS, you'll find that it's a very nice application. What it does essentially is it goes through your feeds on Facebook or Twitter and shows you a visual representation of the timeline of, hey, here's a story that your friend, like for example, my friend Julian, he'll be reading some interesting stories about math or something like that, or Amanda may be reading some interesting stories about entertainment. So there's all sorts of things happening, but a visual representation is always much nicer than perhaps just reading a bunch of lines of text. And so Flipboard has done very well because it's taken this concept. And so what we wanted to do was show you that that metaphor is completely possible using DevExpress controls. And so this is actually our, excuse me, this is actually our docking library. And this docking library allows you to move items, move tiles. So we have drop zones, and we have these essentially dock widgets that can be filled with anything in there. And so what we've done is we've got a bunch of DevExpress ASP.NET controls in there, everything from images, buttons, to our grid, as well as charts. And this is a fantastic way for you to say, well, this is an ASP.NET project that feels fantastic on an iPad device. And like I said, I highly recommend you try this on an iPad device. Take one of these widgets, drop it in a different zone. And what you'll find is it's smooth. Each iteration is very smooth, it's very fluid, it's very fast, and you can see exactly all the little smarts that we put into it. For example, this is an HTML5 compatible app, and we are using offline caching here because this is very much a application that is simply allows you to cache most of those items because I don't need to hit the server every time. But when I do, what will happen is you'll notice that a little item will pop up here that says updating, and that tells you that it's gone back to the server to get the data that it needs to refresh. Now let's take a look at this in Visual Studio. So the great thing about 12.1 is we've incorporated a lot of these demos for you. So if you go to, after you install DevExpress, if you go to All Programs, under DevExpress DXperience, you'll see the Demo Center. You'll also see the link for the demo source code. Let me first show you the Demo Center. If you've noticed, the latest installer has updated. It's much nicer now, much smoother, much less options. But this allows, we've also changed the Demo Center to kind of mimic this as well, so that you can quickly see, well, which demos do you want to get at? So we still have the great training demos that are available all locally, but we have so many more real-world application-type demos as well. In fact, so we have the Touchboard, the Home Realtor, and the Clinical Study, and these are the three major new ASP.NET demos. Well, of course, there are some other demos for other platforms like WPF and XAF as well, but at least Touchboard and Home Realtor there, and Clinical Study. Now, I mentioned MoneyMonkey. MoneyMonkey is not in the latest release. It will eventually make its way into a minor release, into a 12.1 minor release. We just didn't have enough time. In fact, the great thing about MoneyMonkey was myself, we did include a designer because I'm really horrible at let's say design. So we got our designer in to make those nice gradients that you see at the top here. For example, this, I have no idea how they do that. I couldn't put a monkey up here to save my life. So, he was great at that. But essentially me and about 3 other devs or 2 other devs created this and the mobile version in about a week and a half. And this is all using DevExpress ASP.NET and using a theme that we also introduced that I'll talk about in just a second. And so you can run these locally as well as run them on the server. Now I'm going to show you the local version of this Home Realtor app. So Home Realtor, as you'll notice, and you'll notice that all of these iOS-based demos, we are showing it with a Chrome, an iPad Chrome around it, just to show you that this is really meant for a particular device. And so what this is using is all DevExpress controls. Now what's also very slick about it is when you run this on your iOS device and you change the orientation. So for example, right now I have a list on the side, some content on the right. Let's say I was going from landscape to a portrait. You'll notice that I'm also presenting a different view here altogether. Now I've gone to a grid view here that can be sorted, that can move around the columns. And so this is all the DevExpress power of the grid view that is built in, but it's still got that really nice native look and feel to it. All right, so let's take a look at this in Visual Studio now. So the great thing is after you install 12.1 installation and you open up Visual Studio, whether it's 2010 or the latest 2012 RC, you'll see that we have a bunch of templates in there. Now, typically you might be in Visual Basic or Visual C# under Web. You got all the Microsoft project templates. If you scroll down, you'll find the DevExpress ones. What I recommend is on your installed templates, if you go to the specific DevExpress for Visual C# or Visual Basic and go to Web, you'll find the specific ones that we have for Web. Now we've had the MVC ones, we've had the Outlook inspired. Actually, no, we've had the MVC templates before. What we didn't have was a great templates for web applications, for web forms, and for just getting started with how to create the mail demos and stuff. So in this latest release, we've done a lot of work to improve this story. Now today, I'm going to only talk about the tablet application. We don't have a lot of time, so I want to make sure you get in all your questions and everything. But in this tablet application, if you go File, a new DevExpress Web ASP.NET tablet application, give it a name or something, and hit OK, what you'll find is a project wizard. Now this project wizard is fantastic. In fact, it's beautiful. It's simple. It shows you everything you need to get started to make an iOS-specific, an iPad-specific ASP.NET web app that runs and looks and feels native on those devices. Now, let's go through the options here, and it's really quite simple. At the very top, you have choose layout, site configuration, control settings, and localization. So site configuration essentially is the standard ASP.NET site configuration for whether or not, how much timeout there will be, what kind of client mode you'll use for the IDs and so forth. If you're uploading a large file, how big will that request be, et cetera, et cetera. Typically, I don't really mess with the site configuration unless I have something specific to set. And the DX control settings are really, these are the performance settings that we use with our HTTP handler for making sure, you have the best performance possible. Now, if you'd like to learn more about this, just check out our documentation. But, you will see that we don't enable HTML compression by default because, there may be an issue if you're using IIS compression. So just some things to be aware of, and whether or not you're using right-to-left layout and so forth. And finally, localization. We're doing a lot of work internally to make sure that we provide all of our controls localization so that you can easily get started without having to worry, is your language supported? So, it takes a lot of work to make sure you got it right. So right now, we have these languages supported, but with each release, we're going to get better at it. So the main screen, the one that you're most likely going to work with each time, is this choose layout. And in this screen, we have spent a lot of time studying the iOS guidelines for how this toolbar should look, how big should be the tab bar, where, how far apart should be the side panel and the width and everything. So we have complied to the iOS guidelines so you don't have to. You don't have to read them. You don't have to worry about them. And what's really interesting is, you may not see, like for example, you see toolbar up here. You see kind of toolbar and kind of it's broken here. Well, the reason is because iOS specifies this. In fact, you may, for example, have a logo here. You may want to have a different item that corresponds just to the client area. And we give you the option to figure out how you want to lay out specifically. Do you want a toolbar? Do you want a side panel? And so you can pick and choose. And we've also given you the option to choose what you want in those areas. So for example, in the side panel, we give you a nav bar. Or if you don't want one, you can say leave it empty. In the client area, we give you a grid view. And finally, a tab bar. So pick and choose what you would like in each of those areas. Now, in this area, you also see the option to choose Realtor Store. Realtor Store is the demo version that is based on this layout, very much so. In fact, it actually has some data built into it as well. But let's first start with this custom project, so we can show you exactly what gets built and what kind of smarts are built into there. And what's great is that this demo is the basis for even Money Monkey and a lot of those, a lot of the other demos that I've shown you so far. So the very first thing is when the project gets created, it creates a DevExpress specific ASP.NET web project that has all of the references added for the DevExpress controls. So you don't have to worry, hey, how do I start adding this and are there references there or not? So as you can see, everything from charts, pivots, and so forth that you need will be added there. Now, we also add in some fake data. And we do this because we want you to get started right away. including some images and some scripts and so forth. But you'll see under styles, we also add specific styles for landscape and portrait mode. So this is very much specific for iOS devices. Now, if you take a look at the default page, you'll see that we are simply using nothing but ASP.NET here. There is no specific Xcode, there's no specific code other than HTML and ASP.NET. And in fact, if you look at the master page, you'll see that we've taken care of all of the different items for when should a particular style sheet be used. We're doing the media queries here to figure out, hey, make sure this is, if you're running this on iPad, don't show the, use the particular style for the particular browser and so forth. And we also set it up so that you can easily get started and say, well, now I can simply change this item here. But the best part is I haven't done anything other than File New and click Create Project here. And then when I run this, I'm gonna say Start here. And what we'll find is that as soon as we start it, you are able to get going. We wanted to have you get started as quickly as possible so that when this application is run and it's built, you'll see that you have a working version with items that you can click on. The touch targets are big enough. For example, you have a grid here where you can move around the columns, where you can click on items to sort it, ascending or descending. We've got buttons up here that you can link to. We've got navigation built in using our paging control. And the reason we did all of this is so that you can essentially upload this entire project to your ASP.NET server, browse to it from your iPad, and you have a native experience already using it. Now, in iOS, if you want to make it more native by getting rid of the scroll bars and stuff, there's an option where you can essentially there's a button that allows you to add a icon to the home screen, and when you run it that way, it still runs it as Safari, but it runs it without all of the Chrome of the status bar or the URL bar and so forth. So that gives you even more native experience. So what I recommend is experience that on an iOS device, and you'll see. Now, let's take a look. Oops. Let's take a look at that other one that I mentioned. Now, if you click File New Project, we'll go Tablet again, and this time I'll simply select Realtor Store. Now, Realtor Store is a full demo, and we've got some more items in here. Now, this is very much based on that tablet layout that I just showed you, but we wanted to show you that, look, take this, in fact, take this demo if you'd like, and use it for whatever purpose you want in terms of showing your own particular data. Change around the layout, change around what type of data you show. But you'll see that we've got the different types of views built in. So when you go to portrait, it uses different style and so forth. And the way we achieve this is we've got a set of user controls that we've added. So there's again the references, there's some app data. But you'll see under controls, we've got a set of user controls that show you how the tablet might look in a landscape versus portrait. And so what's interesting about this is you can essentially from this code walk through and figure out exactly what we're doing. But if you're really just more interested in getting started, the fantastic thing is this is an ASP.NET control that you can essentially data bind. So as you can see, we're simply using XML data source. But if you like, this is still ASP.NET. This is still going to run on your ISS server. So you can use a SQL data source. So it'll talk to your backend. Now, obviously, you want to keep in some considerations for if this is going to work offline. You may want to think about, well, what can you cache locally and so forth. But this is really ASP.NET. This is a server-based technology. And the idea here is that today you can get going and provide at least a very rich native experience with a look and feel that takes no effort in terms of learning Xcode. You're leveraging your existing investment in .NET. Your expert ASP.NET developers will find it very seamless because it's all built. Now, how do we do a large part of this? Well, in this latest release, we introduced a new theme. And it's the iOS theme. And as you see in the web config, if you simply set it under the DevExpress themes property, this globally sets for every item in this project to use the iOS theme. So the iOS theme really was the easiest way for us to provide it. And what it essentially does is let's take a look at it, lets you to experience the DevExpress controls for iPads. Now, I keep mentioning iPads because, while we support touch on all iOS devices, you want to be careful because, for example, you can run the scheduler here with the iOS theme. It won't look great on a smaller device just because you don't have the real estate. So always try to keep in mind that the amount of real estate that you have is very important consideration for what you want to show there. So you always want to try to design as much for the device as possible, even if you're going to use one ASP.NET project, which is completely possible. So as you saw in MoneyMonkey, when we eventually expose that in a future release, it's one ASP.NET project that is delivering simply 2 views. And as you'll see in this example, you can easily do that. Just we're doing some simple media queries to check what browsers somebody's running, and that allows us to choose which view we're going to deliver. Now, let's go back to slides here. So we just took a look at the home realtor there and the new project. Now let's do a quick recap so we can address all your questions. First, the ASP.NET web apps for iOS allow you to easily get started, and this was by design. We wanted you to take an experience that works today and say, how do I take what DevExpress has built that's got the nice look and feel to it, and then start customizing it from my data, from my needs, from my own views. So I highly recommend you download our trial today, get started with it, and play around with these demos. These demos are available locally. All the source code is there. In fact, let's take a look at the location again. So if you click Start All Programs in DevExpress, DXperience, if you click on Demo Source Code, you'll see that it takes you to the Users Public Documents folder. Now we did this because in 2010 they changed some permissions for the local IIS that gets run. But essentially, if you go to this folder, you'll find that these are all the different demos we have available. So if you go under ASP.NET, if you go under Common, and choose the language that's more comfortable for you, C# or VB, you'll find all of the source code for the demos. We don't hide any of the source code, so it's all available locally. Now, I didn't talk about the clinical study. We'll talk about that in a future version, but even that is a great demo. In fact, I'll show it real quick here in a second. But essentially, everything from event registration to home realtor to touchboard, and in the future we'll have MoneyMonkey here as well, this allows you to play around with this, see what it's like and so forth. So I highly recommend that you try these out today. Now let's just take a quick look because I really am proud of the clinical study trial as well. Now the clinical study is a vertical application, meaning that it's made for one particular industry, obviously for the medical industry. And why do we choose clinical study? Well, we've got some fantastic developers, and recently we just hired these some developers who had worked on this major application, and they were just so proud of it. So they made a mini version of this. Now, when I say mini, the application they had built was huge, and so this application does maybe 1/1000. In fact, it's got completely fake data and everything. But the idea is that even this, the amount of features that we have in this application shows you what's possible with a lot of DevExpress controls. And so this, as you can see, is it's touch friendly enough. It was developed really for the desktop web, but you'll find that it's not completely unusable for the desktop, for the iOS either. Now, I keep mentioning iOS, and I want to reiterate, we support touch on Android devices as well. So for example, you can run this demo on an Android device. It's just that for these home realtor and for these MoneyMonkey and so forth, we chose to use the look that is native to iOS simply just because it's a little bit more popular at the moment. So take a look at this clinical study app as well. It's a great way to experience what all the DevExpress controls can do. And as you'll see that, we've got lists, we've got some really nice layouts that have a great touch and feel to it. So please check them out, and all the source code is available locally. Now, We also took a look at the DevExpress DXperience version 12.1, a small set of features in 12.1. We didn't cover everything for ASP.NET, and we're going to be doing more of this webinars for 12.1 to cover all the new MVC extensions that we just released and so forth. But in this particular one, we looked at one of the major things, which is that tablet file project template. It gets you started today. Now, it's your turn. We want you to download this latest universal trial. I mean, go right now, actually right after I get done, go download it. If you're a customer, go to your client center, download your product. Of course, you can find it at DevExpress.com. I thank you very much for watching this webinar. And, you know, as I said, I'm a horrible designer. Somehow my head got cut off there. I apologize. But you can find me online at devexpress.com/Mehul. That's my blog there. You'll find me on Twitter at Mehul Harry. And with that, I'll give it to Amanda.
Hey, Mehul, thank you. We do have a couple of questions that have been building up in here from Eric. Was the Metro theme for ASP.NET introduced in 12.1?
Eric, no. It's on our roadmap, and it did not make it in 12.1. So, like I said, I'm excited about Metro. I think Metro is fantastic. And, you know, we are definitely, it's still on our roadmap.
Okay, and from Jack, will this also work with Droid devices, meaning as far as CSS, etc.?
Yes and no. So, for example, the short answer is yes, and then the specifics of, so for example, I mentioned that we are doing some CSS media queries to say, oh, this is, and like I said, we optimize this for iPads, right? Meaning that while it may work, it may not work optimally, right? Meaning that only certain things might work. So when you run this on iOS, what happens is we look at and say, oh, you're on iOS of iPad. Well, then switch over and use native scrolling. I mean, why have this browser? Because Safari on iPad provides that for us. So we're going to take advantage of that because now you're using the local hardware's acceleration and so forth, right? So the experience is much better. So the short answer is yes, it'll work. It may not work because the look is going to be the same, right? So somebody might say, well, this doesn't look like a typical Droid application, right? Now, Droid may have a certain other feel to it. But as you can see, the colors, the fonts, they're very much iOS specific. So my recommendation is, yes, try them out, you know, but don't let it stop you. My recommendation is that, you know, this is still ASP.NET theme. It's customizable. We have a tool that allows you to ASPX theme builder, right? So this theme builder will let you take an existing theme and modify it for its icons, for its colors, for its font sizes, all that great stuff. So you know, you would not believe, Jack, the amount of work it takes to create and support a new theme. In fact, you know, it's a lot of effort from a lot of people. So like I said, that's why we sort of provided you this tool because, you know, we have a lot of existing themes right now. For every release, we have to test them for all the different browsers that we support. Everything from all the desktop web browsers and now these new mobile browsers. So like I said, we do support Android. So we test them on several different Android browsers. But we had to pick and choose, for example, on this release that, hey, if we're gonna try to support it, let's have a great experience. Let's not try to make one that may work best across both, right? I know, let's put it this way. It's a dream, I believe, to have that capability. In my experience, though, it's always better to try to provide the best experience for the browser and the device that they're using. So if possible, you know, try to do that. If you'd rather go for a more generic approach, I mean, you know, the clinical study one that we just looked at, you saw that it's very easy to have just a standard look that may look nice across both of them. So if you look at clinical study on an iOS versus Android, it'll look the same. So it's just a matter. We have an iOS theme that's optimized for iOS, and then we have some other themes like the Office themes and Aqua and DevX and so forth that are optimized generally for desktop web, but they look good overall. They just may not have as big of touch targets as the iOS theme does.
Great. And then from Luke, differences between the iPad 2 and 3 regarding the Retina display and the different resolutions?
Oh, great question, Luke. Essentially for us, because this is ASP.NET, right, we're still running HTML. So the great thing is that the work is passed down to Safari, right? So we have nothing specific to do. Now, you may find that there are advantages for you. So for example, if your customers are, let's say, all on iPad 3 and using Retina, you may want to optimize specifically and say, well, now I have the capability, so maybe I'll, change the items. But for us, for example, this button has a certain rounded corner. And this rounded corner is going to look great on iPad 2 or 3. On iPad 3, obviously, it's going to have twice the pixels, and it's going to look a little bit sharper, right? But the choice is up to you. As I said, if you got more customers on iPad 3 and you're like, well, I want to deliver to them an even better rounded image here. Well, that's great. Open up our theme editor, and then choose the icons that are better for you. But in essence, for us, there really isn't much difference because you're still running in the browser. You're still sandboxed on that device. It's not necessarily a native experience, right? But it's a native feel from a web app.
Let's see, from Jeremiah, is there any provision in these controls to tap into any of the hardware sensors? Specifically, we need to access the GPS information from the iOS device.
Good question, Jeremiah. As I mentioned, the browsers are sandboxed. Now, what happens is, take a look at, we did a webinar recently on Bing. If you go to DevExpress.com and if you under support, you'll see webinars. This usually lists the most current ones, and then you can look at the past ones. If you go to that most recent one, and I believe it was in May, take a look at this Add Bing Interactive Maps. And here you'll find a video of the webinar. And in this webinar, I covered how to add Bing. And what happens is when you add this using, let's say, an HTML5 tag, the browser will say, hey, this website wants to access your location. Do you want to allow it? There is no way to get around that from a browser because you are sandboxed. So the short answer is yes, if the end user, consumer, allows it. And that's just essentially how it should work, right? You don't want to go to a website and have it automatically get at your local, photos or local capabilities to know your location without you actually approving that. So yes, it's possible to write that code and build it in. The end user will still have to approve it. Now, native applications don't have that limitation because when you download that, that's implied. So I hope that that helps answer that.
From Carlos, I get the impression that you are giving more importance to evolve ASP.NET controls than WinForms in DevExpress. Am I wrong?
More important for all ASP than WinForm in DevExpress. Carlos, you know what? Amanda, can you type in Julian B at DevExpress.com? So Julian is our fantastic CTO. I can't speak to that. I'm on the ASP.NET projects mostly. Look, I don't think there's anybody better than DevExpress at WinForms out there, right? I don't think there's anybody that still pays attention to WinForms as much as DevExpress. So, if you were to prove to me that, then yes. Now, in my opinion, if you're going to ask me, I don't think we pay enough attention to ASP.NET. Obviously, if it was up to me, I'd say, hey, let's all go completely ASP.NET. That's nothing to say that WinForms isn't fantastic. WinForms is amazing. I used to do WinForms all the time. It's rich, gives you a lot of capability, but it is also a mature framework, and we have the best set of tools for WinForms out there, and we haven't stopped. In every release, we have something for WinForms, and if you go to DevExpress.com, and let's say if you go to 12.1 feature overview, you'll see that, oops, introducing 12.1 actually, and if you just take a look at all the different items, I'm sorry, it is discovering DXV2, and in here you'll see all the different items so we have for WinForms and so forth, right? So you'll see that we haven't stopped, right? So we have this coded UI support. I mean, that's huge. And so this really isn't sort of a WinForms webinar, but I recommend you email Julian, take a look at this link, and you'll see that we haven't given up on it at all. Oh, hello?
Hey, Mehul. It's Julian here.
Hey, awesome. Thanks, Julian.
Awesome, yes. I'd just like to point out that, as you are already saying, we are upgrading and improving our WinForms controls. We have not abandoned WinForms. It is an important platform for us. In fact, we are providing WinForms developers the ability to have touch-enabled controls inside their applications. It may not look like much, but the tile control, for example, is huge. You can't just say, WinForms is being abandoned if we're going to be doing things like adding touch and coded UI support, for example, to WinForms. Maybe because this happens to be an ASP.NET webinar, it seems as if WinForms is being ignored, but that is far from the truth.
Yep. Thank you very much, Julian. And as I said, I don't believe it. I think, Amanda, there are some other webinars coming up maybe that may address this, but I wouldn't worry about it. But listen, in my goal from this webinar is I would really hope you guys download this stuff. I want to see what you guys built with these iOS-based themes, with our Home Realtor, with our Money Monkey, with our touchboard applications. And as I said, these are meant for tablets. I mean, I'm excited about these. I'm passionate about these because we didn't really have a great story in the past. We have a great story now. Try these today. Take what we built, just get started with it, upload it, and you've got a link, send it to me on Twitter, post it on my blogs or something like that, or email me. You can email me at mehul@devexpress.com. So, that's, as I said, it's a great story for you. It's a great story for your customers. Check it out.
Awesome.
With that, sure.
And thank you all for your questions. All right, so you can visit devexpress.com/webinars for the upcoming webinar sessions and the remaining webinars in this Take a Tour 12.1 series. Our second Take a Tour webinar is June 26th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Productivity Accelerated. Mark Miller will demo the latest improvements in CodeRush and user experience testing. CodeRush is a Visual Studio add-in that helps make your code better, faster, and smaller. See how using CodeRush can simplify your code to make it more maintainable. Learn how CodeRush enables smaller, faster applications, and hear how to do user experience testing with DXperience 12.1. And then July 10th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Touch, Dazzling Design, Developer Delivered. Tim Aidlin, our creative director here at DevExpress, will explain the design concepts integrated into the project templates and demo applications built into DXperience 12.1. Tim will walk through the design decisions that we've made and how to approach design concepts for the typical developer, see how to approach design concepts and building applications, and learn how to use the DevExpress templates and samples as a starting approach to your own app design. Learn how to accelerate productivity, build stunning apps, and work faster and smarter than ever before with DX2. And again, if you haven't downloaded 12.1 yet, you can try it for free today at devexpress.com/trial. Again, thanks to Mehul, and of course, thank you all for joining us. Let's see what develops. Bye-bye.